Now, everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Hello, I'm James McAvoy.
And I'm Dan Radcliffe.
I play Dr. Victor Frankenstein.
And I play Igor in the new film Victor Frankenstein.
Igor, you and I shall be at the very heart of a scientific enterprise that will change the world. We shall create a life out of death. It's alive.
Do you realise how significant this is?
Oh, I have an inkling.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani with the rather horrifying David Cohen. Are you there?
I still can't. I'm thinking of, Harry Potter. And when I hear Daniel Radcliffe's voice, I go back to that movie. Sorry.
The creators of that movie wished that he had the power that was in that wand to actually make that movie make some money.
Entertaining,
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Right. The question is Frankenstein significant? Why is it still around? Over the past 2 years, there's been, believe it or not, 3 movies, and this in the past 2 years,
wow,
starring or including the Frankenstein monster. The first one, which we can, I don't know, in 2004, did you ever see this? I, Frankenstein?
No.
All right, it was a major release, made no money, it happened. Hotel Transylvania II came out. It
I didn't even see one.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's for younger kids, though, so I can understand not seeing it.
Okay.
But it made some money. And then now there's Victor Frankenstein, which was just released. And
starring Harry Potter.
Right? Harry Potter. And it is just, it's Daniel Radcliffe, of course, in case he's listening. He doesn't want to get offended. We don't want to offend anybody, right? The creature's risen from the dead. Why again is this so fascinating?
They can't kill Frankenstein. They can't kill the Frankenstein movie enterprise.
The legend just goes nowhere. Mary Shelly created an immortal being. Seriously, with this legend. I'm going to just start a smidge before we get into this. 2 things that's interesting about this. First of all, it was created 200 years ago in 1818. Mary Shelley wrote this when she was 20 years old. Think about a young lady in
20.
that society, the Victorian, and even before Victorian era. In 1818, creating this kind of a novel, which is pretty interesting. And in so doing, she had to publish it because of the society and maybe people not wanting to read what a woman's writing back then. She anonymously published it in 1818, and 5 years later in France in 1823, she finally was able to put her name attached to this project,
wow,
which had already been a hit for 5 years. She finally said...
And no one knew for those 5 years it was written by a woman.
Yeah, there was a clamoring as to who really wrote this. It was written and it was labeled anonymous as the writer.
I wonder if they could believe it when they actually found out that it was a woman at the time.
It's a good question, where did that come from? Maybe, I don't know, I've dug through, I do some research. It's not always on Wikipedia or YouTube. I did a little research in the local library in New York City, the public library, and pulled out, yes.
Wow, good for you.
I found a newsreel from 1818 or so that goes through a little of the history showing how this phenomenon, the book itself, the novel, is different from what you see in the movie theaters. It's very different.
And the newsreel explains it.
It tries to explain it. We'll dive a little more. It's not always perfect. They didn't make the newsreel with us in mind, but we'll try to see if we can establish that. Let me press the button on that. All right, go ahead.
From the beginning, the monster is rejected by everyone he meets. He realizes upon the moment of his birth that even his own creator cannot stand being around him. Upon seeing his own reflection, even the creature himself realizes he cannot stand himself. His greatest desire is to find love and acceptance, but when that desire is denied, he swears revenge on the creator. Contrary to many film versions, the creature in the novel is very articulate and eloquent in the way of speaking. He can speak quickly, and he can enunciate well. Almost immediately after his creation, he dresses himself, and within 11 months, he can speak and read German and French.
There it is. That voice sounds so familiar. I think he must have made a lot of money back then. I've heard him talk about Hercules and Dracula.
Right.
That's amazing. But I try to pat myself on the back for that research that I do. Dig that stuff.
I'm
up.
surprised you found that. That's pretty cool.
It is.
And the quality was really good considering it was 1818 before they were recording voices.
Well, you've got these programs. You could take out all the hiss. You could take out all the stuff. Mike, our engineer, did a lot of work with that. I'm telling you.
I didn't even know that, sound recordings were even possible in 1818. But, hey,
Listen,
good work. Good work.
Thank you. There's a lot of stuff that you don't know. There's a lot of conspiracies out there keeping stuff a secret from the general public. You didn't know, but that was created just for this show in mind. And a little time travel there. We'll talk about that down the line. But the original themes, not to be too serious, but the original themes of that novel are interesting to me in that you've got creation of life from death, which is always something that's been prevalent in our society. It's a new life form.
We've created life from death?
Well, we've had that thought. There's been a lot of literature trying to create something that's inanimate.
Oh, I thought you meant it actually has happened. I thought I missed something.
Well,
okay.
No, not yet, but we're working on it. If I could find clips like that in the library, maybe I'd roll up my sleeves and
exactly.
But also the question is really looking at the monster itself. It represents a struggle for life in that someone that is not accepted by society for whatever disability, whatever look, whatever it is that turns people off to this person that they end up calling a monster really was a person. He didn't ask to be made and reborn, if you think about it.
Right.
And he wakes up and he scares people left and right. And meanwhile, in Mary Shelley's version, this is an intelligent being. So an intelligent being stuck inside this environment where he can't even get a word out without people running away or being scared or something like that, I think is something that has been created that we've seen a number of times before, but maybe this is one of the first times it was taken seriously in literature.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's been the Hunchback in Notre Dame, which was created by Victor Hugo in 1831, sometime thereafter. And let's just listen to Hollywood's recreation of that one.
My parents I never knew, being not blind, but merely dumb of love. They abandoned me to die on the steps of this building. The books in the library below became my only companions. I read every one of them. Thanks to them, today I have many friends, from Cicero to the Celestine Fathers. Never have I seen my ugliness as I do now. When I compare myself to you, I feel very sorry for the poor, unhappy monster that I am. With you, a ray of sunshine, a drop of dew, the song of a bird, while I am something frightful.
A little touching, I think.
Yeah,
and that was the 79 version, not the 39 version with Charles Lawton. 79 TV movie with Selma Hayek and Mandy Patinkin. Yeah, did you see it?
No.
I would highly recommend it. Hate to say like I'm Mr. Know-It-All, but that was so touching, such a great presentation of that theme, and you could hear through that the emotions. And the guy is a tremendous actor.
Yeah,
he was, of course, in Princess Bride. If you're not familiar,
Sure.
And some other. He was on Broadway. Tremendous. On Broadway star.
Yeah, he goes way back.
I got to tell you, it's a very close rendition to the actual book itself, written by Victor Hugo, and promotes and presents that theme. Let's go take a look at also 1980s Elephant Man, same theme.
I am not an elephant! I am not an animal! I am a human being!
All right, so I mean that's something we'll leave you with to think about for a moment, and we're going to come on back and explore this theme a little bit more.
I am beautiful in every single way. Yes, words can't bring me down. Oh no. So don't you.
Well, we're back, and that was the real life story of John Merrick, who lived in 1862 to 1890. Only 28 years he lived with that condition, and that was John Hurt and Anthony Hopkins. I mean, tremendous actors. Do you remember that movie?
Oh, of course, yeah, I do.
And people make fun of that line all the time. That became a little bit of a shtick for people, and it was so famous. But I mean, that was real life.
So why in the movies hadn't we seen Frankenstein be more true to the novel and to say some of the things that the Hunchback said, and that that the Elephant Man said.
And those kind of emotions and quotes are if you read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, are in the literature. So it's a great question. Hollywood, I think, will go to that in the next section, grabs a hold of this in the 1930s, which is 110 to 120 years after this has been published. And they kind of try to do that with the monster, but it was more of, like the beginnings of horror in movies. And that's what took...
They wanted the shock value.
But that, I think, is also one of the reasons, in my view, why it didn't succeed in the long term in terms of the Universal.
Interesting.
It wore out a little bit. Let's listen to the Hulk versus the Thing. I have a little bit of a battle between them.
I don't believe my baby blues. Stand behind me.
What?
The lady's with me, Mr. Green Jeans. Girl, not belong with ugly rock thing like you.
There's a little more of that same theme, the ugly rock thing. And if you look at Fantastic Four in the comics, the Thing has the same exact situation going on as the original Frankenstein monster. And we'll pick up that theme when we return right after this on Everything Old is New Again. Come on back. Talk about the monster Frankenstein himself.
Bring me down.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Mr. Carl Lemley feels it would be a little unkind to present this picture without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, well, we've warned you.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again.
That should be the intro to our show every week. You might be horrified.
I mean, think about that, what went on there. That, you don't see it on TV. That was played on every presentation of Frankenstein in 1931 in the theaters. That was the clip played right before the movie started to warn you. And
so it wasn't even part of the movie?
It's I guess you would say it's part of the movie where, in other words, before the movie starts... And where you would have Bugs Bunny or whatever was playing.
Right.
After that, it was played this, and then that music went right into the movie. So I guess it was part of the movie. It's like
a public service message, right?
Listen,
we're going to scare the bejesus out of you. So
and Carl Lemony was the producer. If you recognize the name, you probably don't, but that gentleman mentioned, this producer wants me to tell you, listen, this thing could be horrifying.
Horrifying.
So that was when Hollywood got a hold of Frankenstein, 1931. That's 113 years after Mary Shelley produced.
But they really didn't have film for a while, so it's not like they waited around for.
No, they did some Broadway type of shows as well.
Give it 100 years, then we'll make the movie. That was an executive decision.
And then, it's got this great clip. I think you'll recognize this for sure.
It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. Oh, in the name of God. Now I know what it feels like to be God.
That's me every morning when I finally am able to wake up Leo from his deep sleep, my 3-year-old, to get him out to school. He's alive! But that actually was Colin Clive. No name you probably have no idea.
No, I thought I had that condition, actually, Colin Clive, and they fixed it. But
God
no, I've never
you.
heard the name.
But, that was the beginning of the fascination with Frankenstein, that overacting, if you want to call it that. But he
was excited, Dr. Frank. Victor, come on.
It grabbed the attention of everyone, as did what I think now could be, in my thinking, that the simplicity of the scene that I'm going to play right now, where Boris Karloff is playing the monster, and he is has run away, and he runs into this little girl.
That was scary. I remember that.
Think about this. Listen to this.
Daddy, won't you stay and play with me a little while?
I'm too busy, darling. You stay and play with the kitty, huh?
Bye, Daddy.
Goodbye. Be a good girl now.
Who are you? I'm Maria. Will you play with me? Would you like one of my flowers? You have those, and I'll have these. I can make a boat. See how mine float? No, you're hurting me! No!
Now, I don't know if it relates it so much on radio if you haven't seen the movie on television, you know.
Right.
But that's the monster, and now this is
drowning the little girl.
Right, because they were playing with flowers. The flowers float, and he thought the child. He just, with the next extension was let me have the child float.
Yeah,
and threw into the water, and of course she couldn't swim, and she dies. They cut that scene out of the movie. When you see it now, you will not see that scene. And in fact, when that movie was released, Boris Karloff asked them, the producers, to eliminate that scene from the movie, and they did it then too.
Really?
I should say sometimes they'll see it now. Obviously, we've all seen it, but it's one of the most horrifying scenes because this innocent monster and this innocent child don't know the danger of the water.
Right.
And and then he skulks away. But that's a little pathos, a little difference in the character that Mary Shelley created, because Mary Shelley's character would know. Of course, Mary Shelley's character was intelligent. So there's where you first go astray a little bit. And then there was The Bride of Frankenstein. They try to bring in this theme of the monster being a little more intelligent because he starts to talk in Bride of Frankenstein, and he wants to be accepted, and he's met with this.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
That was the bride meeting the groom?
Yes, or could very well have been any of us that ask someone to a prom that doesn't have the experience of.
I remember a higher pitched scream than the girl I asked. But.
Would you like to? It was before I even get out the words. Yeah, we had some problems there. I ended up Dave and I went to the prom together, but not together as dates.
Although in retrospect, probably would have been better.
We sort of were, because we were sort of talking to each other more than
that's true.
Dates. I did end up asking a girl, but I was trying to impress him while I was dancing in like a loon. Remember back in the day, I actually split my pants. So at the end of that night, I was kind of horrified
Horrified.
I should have had that warning before the prom, because I drove up to her house at the end, and I was all giddy and 16 or 17, and I was happy. Maybe I'd have a nice goodbye kiss or what have you, and she didn't scream. I almost did when she put her hand out and said, "Thank you, I had a great night." And
so you got a handshake at the end of the night.
The classic handshake, and off I went.
So you didn't. That doesn't qualify as scoring, I think.
No. I scored a bill to the tailors because I had it was one of those tuxedos that I had to repair as a result of my antics. So let's turn to the son of Frankenstein, Basil Rathbone, playing in this scene. It's tremendous.
As a man, I could destroy him. But as a scientist, I should do everything in my power to bring him back to conscious life. By heaven, I think you're a worse fiend than your father. Where is this monster? I'll stay by your side until you confess. And if you don't, I'll feed you to the villagers.
Now, that's Basil Rathbone, who's, of course, known for being Sherlock Holmes, if you don't know that, right?
Right.
And he was the villain in tons of movies.
And what was that movie?
That was The Son of Frankenstein, the third movie, the last time that Boris Karloff played the monster. Now, I'll say to you that I think he was the best. I think everyone agrees with that. He emoted through his eyes, and in the third movie, he actually spoke a lot.
Well, when you see the black and white pictures of Frankenstein, that's him, right? I mean, He's the iconic image of Frankenstein.
Absolutely. And that's because if you listen to and watch those movies, you could see what he's playing in his eyes. He really was a great actor. He was kind of, emoting just this character through what he was doing.
Couldn't speak, right?
Yeah. So. Later on, he started to speak a little bit in this movie, but later on, he became associated with Frankenstein as being the best. But other characters played him. None of them played him that way with that emotion. They all played him as the monster. That's all he was from that. So the last time I think that the Frankenstein was really tried to be true in some ways to the pathos and the theme that Mary Shelley created was this one. This is the first time we see Igor, and played by Dracula himself, Bela Lugosi. which is the Daniel Radcliffe part in this new incarnation. Let's go forward now and see The Ghost of Frankenstein. We've got Lon Chaney Jr.
This is the fourth now?
This is the fourth
movie.
one with Bela Lugosi as Igor again.
There's a curse on our village. The curse of Frankenstein.
Father was Frankenstein. That your mother was the lightning.
The most dreaded creation of man, the monster of Frankenstein, stalks again in the gripping tale of a monster the tomb cannot engulf, chains cannot hold.
You're going to give him life?
Yes. Not for the purposes that you think, Igor. I'm giving him another brain.
Now that's the Wolfman who plays, you didn't hear him, but the Wolfman actor Lon Chaney Jr. plays the monster, and Bela Lugosi, Dracula himself, playing Igor again.
Right, you could hear that.
It's amazing. Yeah. Let's just see if we can sneak in here the Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, where Bela Lugosi now plays the monster. Listen to this acting. That's the Wolfman. Some in wherein there is Bela Lugosi playing the monster.
So they got into a few movies where they would fight, right? They put Frankenstein up against Dracula, Wolfman, and
the emotions, the pathos, all the thoughts behind this character are gone. We'll be right back. We're not going anywhere. Come on back. Everything old's new again.
Hey, Charlie, why the arm in the sling?
Yeah, I walked straight into that busted street sign in front of Frank's Automat.
Well, you must have been really sore at him.
You said it, pal. I said, say, what's a big idea of making a fella trip out there? I was going to sock him right in the kisser.
He's all wet. Why, you ought to sue him, Charlie.
I have half a mind to do just that. But where am I going to get that kind of dough?
Say, I know a fella just got me out of a big jam, and he didn't break the bank.
You don't say.
Yeah, the law office of Douglas Viviani.
The law office of Douglas Viviani?
That's right, the law office of Douglas Viviani.
Viviani?
That's what I said, Viviani.
He a straight shooter?
He's a cat's meow.
He's on the up and up?
Doug's ace is with me.
Is that so?
He's a bee's knees.
Well, that's just swell. You have his number?
You can call him at 631-681-1910 or email him at vivianilaw.com.
Wait, what was that last part?
What, email?
Yeah, what's email?
vivianilaw.com.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything old is new again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
This kind of story seems to go on forever, and I've often wondered if the real reason isn't that it's the oldest kind of story in the world, really. That it has its roots very deep in the legends and the fairy tales and the folklore of every race in the world and has a universal appeal. And I think that's why they go on, in one form or another.
That's the Grinch himself talking about Frankenstein. Isn't that a shame? This guy, Boris Karloff, in the 30s and 40s, was as great as anyone playing these monsters. He played a lot of other monsters, and we'll talk about that down the line. But he was almost, I think, I analogize it to a guy that did like the silent movies, and you hear about how they couldn't translate because the voice wasn't there, and there's been comedies about that and all.
Yeah,
you know?
they sound like this. Yeah, right.
The big hero, and he's got that crazy. But he's got an odd, unique voice, and perfect for the Grinch. But if the monster Frankenstein spoke like he spoke just now, what would you think?
No, not too scary. Yeah. This is some English guy. You know?
You're like, all right, would you like to sit down with some tea?
Hello, I'm the Frankenstein monster.
Which again was what Mary Shelley's.
That's what she was going for.
Yeah,
right?
And he had a German accent. And he knew French. Whatever. It's crazy. But we're back on to talking about the universal treatment of Frankenstein. It goes on. 1944. There was the House of Frankenstein, where Boris Karloff plays the doctor. Lon Chaney Jr. is in the mix. John Carradine is now Dracula. He'll later play Frankenstein in the 1970s.
That's David Carradine's father, right?
Yes.
John Carradine.
Yeah, Kung Fu himself. So, I mean, it's amazing, the history of it. Let's listen to a little smidge of that.
Now, this brain, if taken from the man and transplanted into the skull of the dog, would give him the mind of a human being. I could give you a perfect body.
Now, that's... An interesting quote. Well, it sounds like every time you go past one of those gyms, like you want to sign up for gym membership, I could give you a perfect body. Just sign here for $50 a month. Anyway,
horrifying.
Should be that guy standing out beside the mall. You see those gyms in the mall? You walk by, there's these two burly guys and some girl in a bikini. Come on in. We can get you the body of a perfect body.
Yeah, right.
In that case, it was Glenn Strange that played the monster. If you notice, he didn't talk. There was no talking. He just grunts and groans. He was a big, tall galoot that walked around, and that was it. The monster's down to being just a monster that walks around and maybe pays attention to Dracula and does Dracula's bidding.
I'm just looking up the word galoot. Go ahead.
Completely different than what it was intended. And it goes on. In 1945, David Carradine again plays Dracula. This is now the House of Dracula, as opposed to what we just heard, the House of Frankenstein. And Glenn Strange again is the monster, and Lon Chaney is in it as the Wolfman.
You see before you a man who lived for centuries, kept alive by the blood of innocent people.
When the full moon rises, I turn into a werewolf with only one desire, to kill.
I tried to perform the miracle of science and failed. My blood is contaminated with the blood of Dracula.
Now, I just want to go quickly right to the Frankenstein 1970 movie, which was actually made in 1958. It's not a Universal movie, but it contains Boris Karloff, the last time that he is associated with Frankenstein, other than like a cartoon, which we'll talk about. And he plays Dr. Frankenstein for the first and only time in the movie.
The one, the only, king of monsters. Boris Karloff as Frankenstein, 1970, carrying on the hideous experiments of his infamous ancestor.
In this stone sarcophagus, deep in the bowels of the earth, he buried his creature, his creation.
There he is again, that distinctive voice.
Why was it called Frankenstein 1970 if it was made in 1958? Is it supposed to be like the future?
Yes, the future of Frankenstein, and because the Boris Karloff character is now a different doctor, and they wanted to project it a little bit down the line as the descendants of the son of the original Dr. Frankenstein. He's like the grandson. Anyway, so you can see I'm a big fan of Frankenstein. Almost,
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, so I'm I know you put together. We talked about this beforehand. You wanted to quiz me. I know that. I didn't see anything else about this, but now since we have a little time, you wanted to give me.
I put together a little quiz, knowing what a big fan you are. So we're going to play 4 or 5 clips, and it's either going to be a line from the movie or a noise or something like that. When you listen to the clip, tell me what movie it's from. Okay, so let's start with.
And I think all of these, I think, because we're on the Boris Karloff shtick.
Yes.
So I think in some way, we talked about this previously, you're going to keep it to the theme that this is a Boris Karloff related show, whatever movie, whatever you're playing for me here.
Yes.
But that's as far as it goes. I've prepared a little bit in my mind, but that's it. I don't know what you've thrown up here, so let's see what we've got.
You stay. We belong dead.
Yeah, you can tell that's the Bride of Frankenstein. That's the first time
you can tell.
Well, you
How
can hear
you
his
tell?
voice. You can hear Boris Karloff, and that was his presentation of Frankenstein himself right before he and the Dr. Frankenstein. Remember, Frankenstein is really the name of the doctor, right? This is the monster. So he plays the monster. His doctor, his creator, Victor Frankenstein, he's going to take him down at the end of the movie because his bride, which he asked him to create for him, rejected him.
Well, Doug, actually, you're wrong. No, you're right. You're right. So let's play the next one. Let's see how you do.
You will not remember what I show you now, and yet I shall awaken memories of love and crime and death.
Yeah, that voice, huh?
So this does not, as you were saying before, does not have to do necessarily with the Frankenstein monster.
Right. That's a struggle. Can you play that one again, Mike? Just a little bit.
You will not remember what I show you now, and yet I shall awaken memories of love and crime and death.
Yeah, he's not Victor Frankenstein there, but he's in charge. I would say that's got to be the Mummy from the year after Frankenstein, where he doesn't play the Mummy, but he plays this character that brings the Mummy to life.
You are correct. You are correct.
All right, good. Let's.
All right, next one. Let's take a gander at this.
This guy's plenty sick.
That's Abbott Costello.
Really not me.
That's Abbott Costello for sure.
Right.
But you know what? I spoke over it. Try it one more time. Let me just.
This guy's plenty sick. No, Freddy, not me.
Freddie. It's Abbott Costello. The only time Costello was Freddie is in and Boris Karloff did 2 Abbott Costello movies. So it's,
everyone knows that.
yes.
Yeah.
So this is Abbott Costello meet the killer for sure. Because I'll tell you, he's not. He's the only time he was Freddie.
You are correct. It's Abbott and Costello.
Did you know, by
meet
the way, that
killer.
Boris Karloff walked off of that set? He was so upset at that movie and the way his character was presented that he didn't like his role. It had not enough substance to it.
Really? So
Yeah.
did he? But he finished the movie.
He finished it, and he actually came back for another one. Anyway,
So he wasn't that upset.
Right.
Okay. How about this?
I beg your pardon. Have you seen a monster around here? Oh, I see. You can't talk with that heavy mask on. Well, here, I'll help you take it off. You see, we're looking for him for a purpose. Now, there's a reason for...
Yeah, I can go right to that. That's the other one we're talking about. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde meet Abbott Costello meet out Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Correct.
And the original Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll was.
All right, good. This is getting boring. Next clip. Come on, miss one.
But this sound wasn't sad.
Of course, that's the Grinch. What's that to that?
Well, what's the name of it, though?
Grinch Stole Christmas.
Okay.
One small vial. Now to the final step. The infusion of energy.
There he is one more time as Baron Frankenstein himself. That's the last Frankenstein role that was Rankin and Bass, the same guys that did.
And the name of the movie is?
Delaying Mad Monster Party.
Yes.
We'll be back to continue. And everything old is new again. You believe that?
I don't. But I do.
I got him. Now, that was some quiz. I appreciate that, but it's hard, especially when I've prepared for the show. So I've heard, some of these clips recently. Not the clips, but the movies.
Right.
I'm going through it. So it's not like I'm just sitting here at the beach and someone's, or at the bar and someone's throwing the lines at me.
Right.
So I had a little preparation, but
it's amazing how much capacity there is in your brain to remember the minutia, because it's not just Boris Karloff roles. It's like everything that has nothing to do with the real world.
Well, I have a reference there because my brain is rather abby-normal.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Where's that from?
Young Frankenstein, am I right?
So I got you. Question number 1 to you was correct.
Yes.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah.
What'd you think of Young Frankenstein? We'll get to that.
That's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I mean, that was. See, I think what's happening now is, Frankenstein went to like, what was it? I get the date. Well, when they did Abbott Costello meet Frankenstein, I think it was 48. And just, that was the end of it. That was the end of the monster there from 31 to 48, which is 17 years of him being horrifying. And that was it. He's never been scary ever since, I don't think.
Well, but I mean, people intended him to be scary,
Right.
but you haven't found them to be scary.
I don't, and neither is anybody that's watched.
Young Frankenstein's probably the most truest movie to the Mary Shelley novel, probably than any of the others.
You're right. It probably is
because he spoke. He was kind of he was a man about town.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll talk about that down the line, but that was a great point because they brought about what Mary Shelley wanted.
Right.
He was all right. He was a man about town doing, what was the name of that song? I'll probably pull that up.
Putting on the Ritz. Putting on the Ritz.
There you go. All right, we'll be back and everything old is new again. Come on back for some more discussion of Frankenstein.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Count Dracula sleeps in this coffin, but rises every night at sunset. Dracula can change himself at will into a vampire bat, flying about the countryside.
Yes, master.
Hippies on Dracula.
There you go. And you think that I am the expert in all things Frankenstein, don't you?
I do.
All right. Well, I will admit that I have a fascination for that genre, but I'm more of I'm not even going to say expert, but aficionado of Abbott Costello. And now we're able to actually, we've got Abbott Costello references, a little less than the Star Trek references, but we've had quite a few over the last year and a half, 2 years.
By the way, we only have 10 minutes left for you to get in a Star Trek reference here, and
Yes.
I don't say how you're going to do it.
I just did. There it is. We just spoke about it.
That doesn't count. Just saying Star Trek doesn't.
Well, I'm saying we're using you have more of a more Star Trek than Abbott Costello. Listen, that was goes back on track. Was from 1948. Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein. In the late 40s, Universal Pictures, which was the only one that presented any of these movies except for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which was MGM. And Abbott Costello both had basically run their course. Abbott Costello a little less, but they were both on the way down. And so Abbott Costello saved Universal Studios in the early 40s and all those movies they made that you're familiar with. But at this point in time, 48, they took a chance of combining their talents with the monsters of the Universal universe. And it revitalized their career as well as the monsters. But the monsters changed. The monsters now became tongue-in-cheek, try to be funny, and it turned to comedy, and it worked for a while for them. Abbott Costello met like every monster thereafter, and they made some good money doing that. So that's where that comes from. Let's take a listen to Costello imitating now Dracula for the Frankenstein monster, if that makes sense.
Yes, monster.
Hit me some Dracula.
Yeah, that's Glenn Strange again playing the Frankenstein monster. Right. No longer intelligent or even trying to be. No longer any feeling of like, hey, I'm a soul that's in this body that was created.
It's more robotic.
It's robotic. It's not really. It's kind of lost its zest. I think Dracula continued. Dracula even to this day, or vampires continue to this day, pretty strong in a serious mode with all those shows, True Blood and whatever else. Right. So, but you've got Frankenstein's really not serious anymore, even though this new movie they tried it. It's not working. So let's go down the path and see what they did with Frankenstein.
Starring Boris Karloff and Dracula, Frankenstein, the werewolf, the hunchback, the mummy, Dr. Jekyll, and the Invisible Man. Also starring Phyllis Diller as the hostess with the least.
I think Phyllis Diller might be the scariest of all of them, actually. If you really
I like how he just changes his tone. He's got these all dark, serious, and funny girl, Phyllis Diller.
Who, if you don't know, back in the 60s was a huge, I think she was huge comedian. Her and
definitely
Dodie Fields, was that her name?
Toadie Fields.
Toadie Fields.
Yep.
The two of them were like the toast of the town. And then Joan Rivers till the end of the 60s, you know.
Right.
But she's still around, believe it or not. I've seen some interviews with her.
Yep, she's still kicking.
So she carried the day with the Mad Monster Party. If you haven't seen that, I mean, it's a kick if you have kids and you want to young
Can you
children.
actually still see that?
You can still see it. It's on pay-per-views or it's on certainly on DVDs everywhere. It's a pretty good little show. It certainly is exactly kind of what they do in Hotel Transylvania. The kind of Hotel Transylvania's derivative of that. That's for sure. And then we go to the Munsters in the 60s. TV show. Remember this one? You got it.
Of course. Seriously?
There he is, my son-in-law, the 150-year-old teenage punk.
I just can't fight a chick. I gotta get out there and drag it with the gases. Otherwise, doll, I might blow my cool.
Why don't you try and hit it over the center field fence?
Gotcha.
I never saw anything like it. I don't know whether to sign him with the Dodgers or send him to Vietnam.
There you go, the Munsters. We all know that. We did the sitcoms, right? His show, What's the Best Sitcom of All Time?
Right.
It was in there.
It was in the mix,
and I think it was also in for. He did a show on theme songs of TV shows, comedies.
It was in the mix for that too,
and it was going on for I think 3 years, maybe 2 even. But
it's amazing how they got the Dodgers and Vietnam into that. Wow. I didn't know Vietnam could be funny.
Right, exactly. It was it was if you haven't seen it, it's basically the Frankenstein monster with his wife, the wife bride of Frankenstein, and then you've got the Wolfman as the little kid, and they get Dracula.
But I thought the wife was more. That was Dracula's daughter, right? Because Grandpa was her dad or grandfather, I think.
But Grandpa, created her. It came out in one of those episodes.
Did it?
Yeah, and
interesting.
It was.
We should do a show on the Munsters. Seems like this. There's a
I
lot
would
there.
love to, but they're all gone. Well, we could get actually the kid that played
Butch Patrick.
Yeah, okay, that wouldn't be a bad call.
Let's get him.
It was so much fun, that show. Anyway,
was.
so now we're talking about Frankenstein as a goof. But it was very successful, if not, I don't know how to say this. It was successful, but not as successful as they wanted to, because it didn't last a long time. But it's still remembered to this day, even like for scenes like this. It's just
There he is, my son-in-law, the 150-year-old teenage punk.
I just can't fight a chick. I got to get out there and drag it with the gases. Otherwise, Dollar might blow by cool.
Let's see.
It's good to hear
I'm
again.
going to build us a car
Here's our guy.
that I'm going to take to the drag races next Saturday, and that I personally will win back our car from this lead-foot Baylor by beating him at his own game.
Now, who's better in that show? Is it Grandpa or Herman Munster? You tell me.
Grandpa was great. Al Lewis.
He was tremendous, that guy.
It was great. I was he opened a restaurant called Grandpa's in Greenwich Village, and it used to be right around the corner from where I lived, and I'd walk by there, and didn't get a lot of business, but every day I walk by, there's Al Lewis, Grandpa, sitting in the restaurant by the window, waving at people.
He was a maitre d'. I've seen videos on YouTube, believe it or not, of him welcoming people and all of that, with a cigar in his mouth, by the way.
Exactly.
A lit cigar.
Big college basketball scout.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He was a pretty intelligent guy. He was on vaudeville, and he's got some words of wisdom. Believe it or not, he was in his restaurant, and he was interviewed, and here's a little piece of it.
You find something, not that you want to do. That's daydreaming. The need has to be as strong as a junkie's. See, a junkie doesn't want the drug. He needs it. It's a big difference. See, one thing is a kid wants a bicycle, this lady wants a mink coat, this guy wants a Jaguar, he wants a Mercedes-Benz. Those are daydreamers. You have to need it. That's the strength, the adrenaline. Well, my need is to perform. I'm a junkie in that sense. That's why I do what I do.
I mean, he has some presentation, but I mean, it's so simple. You hear it a million times, but those words, I mean, they are. I don't know. Does it resonate?
No,
with
yeah,
you?
absolutely, absolutely.
It's tremendous. Like he's trying to, you always hear these platitudes. In America, you do anything you want. Yes, you can. But you've got to have some modicum of talent. But beyond that, what he's saying is, you got to have the drive that you need to do this at all costs. Right. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, really. We heard Eddie Murphy in the past talk about that, where, he started off and people would say to him, I want to do this, but I'm going to have something else to fall back on. And he said, no, I didn't have a safety net, because if I had a safety net, I'd use it.
You'd fall back on it. Right. That's very smart. I remember him when the Munsters were first on TBS, when TBS was new, and he'd do the voiceover for TBS. Remember that?
Yes.
The Superstation. TBS.
Oh, we may have him back on. It sounds like we might be able to resurrect Al Lewis and bring him to our Tonight Show called Never Too Late. I don't know. It sounded like there was a germ of an accent there you had.
Oh, yeah. No. Yes, I've been mistaken for Grandpa many times.
I'm not talking about looks.
I've always wanted a ham radio set. And now that I've got one, I'm going to listen in on distress signals and notify the authorities and prevent disasters and noble things like that.
There he is. There's Herman himself talking about radio and just that theme of what Al Lewis was talking about. Sometimes, we didn't start the show till later in life. I would have loved to have done it earlier, but this is something that I feel akin to Al Lewis in some way. That doing the show is so much fun that I need to do. I need to perform.
Yeah.
So we'll be back talking about young Frankenstein and the more developments in Frankenstein as we go along.
On the Superstation.
Everything old is new again. Come on back
Different
next
types
week.
who wear a day coat, pants with stripes, or cutaway coat, perfect fit.
And we're back for our LI News Radio fans and the podcast individuals. How did we do so far? What do you think?
Fantastic. Not horrifying at all.
That wasn't a horrifying show?
No, I thought it was good. It was jam-packed with information, and it kept moving, and
if you were
I liked
teaching a
it.
class in Frankenstein, needed to do like the history of Frankenstein, that's the way you should teach it. I'm seriously.
Yeah, right. But stretched out over a couple of weeks, but there's definitely enough material in there to do it. In all
you would
seriousness.
remember with a couple of clips, and you talk about education, and I've got young children and all that. It's interesting to bring things alive. It should be brought alive more than I think it is in school. Right. Just standing up.
Well, because there's so much about it. It's not just bringing back from the dead, but it's
not just doing 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
Anyway, we'll be back next week to continue our discussion of Frankenstein. Come on back, please. Everything old is new again.
Different types who wear a day coat, pants with stripes, or cutaway.